You guys have anything? 0411. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to appoint myself to the legislative committee this morning. And since I'm the only person here, I guess I'll put myself chairman. Let's start with item number 1, update and discussion of federal legislative issues.
So we can start off with the carbon group, Dr. Burke, and Gary Hoitzman's on the line.
Okay, fine.
Yes, hello, this is Gary. Good morning.
Morning, Gary.
I have my written report there. I don't have too many updates. I'll just give a couple of quick updates here. One of the things we've been tracking is who's going to be the Trump administration appointee to the Council on Environmental Quality. This is the White House agency that deals with environmental issues. And there's still no formal announcement of a chairman for that agency yet. But this week it's been leaking to the trade media that the likely candidate is going to be Kathleen Hartnett-White of Texas, who was the Texas environmental quality person. Her name had been widely bandied about as a possible EPA administrator. She's cut out of the mold of Scott Pruitt, if you will. So she seems to be the likely person to get that spot. Secondly, just mention the other day that the Department of Energy announced that their Vehicle Technology Office had issued $19 million in 22 research projects. This is basic research and advanced battery research, engine technology, lightweight materials, kind of the things that we've been interested. So might want to take a look at that one. So with that, that sort of concludes my quick report today. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a question, Gary. This is Bill Burke at AQMD. My understanding is that the Department of Energy in past years have granted up to $18 billion in grants to various institutions for research. My understanding is also that the Obama administration has given all that money to universities, colleges and universities. My third understanding is that the Trump administration is definitely not going to do that. So what's the chances of getting over there and talking to them about some of that money coming here?
Well, that's a good question. Well, we definitely can get over there and talk to them about that. We ought to get a good read on what their plans are. Surely the Trump administration is going to redirect some of that money. They're probably going to cut back on some of it as well. But we could meet with the Vehicle Technology Office as we have in the past. We could meet with the more higher-level political people. Be happy to set that up.
I just happen to have a connection to Rick Perry.
I drove up from Orange County. Yeah.
Whoever's on the other line, can you guys mute it?
Deborah, I think that's you. Can you mute the phone, please?
Sorry, Dr. Burke.
No problem.
You were saying about Rick Perry, Dr. Burke?
Yeah, I can get us in to see Rick Perry, who will be the ultimate decision maker on that. So, you know, if that's helpful, let me know.
Okay.
Moving along to item 2.
No, Dr. Burke, we still have item number 1. We're going to get a briefing from Cassidy and Associates. Amelia is on the line.
Yes, this is
Oh, yeah.
Caleb, and
And then we have Mark.
we're both on the line. In addition to our written report, we just wanted to provide a few quick updates so that's ongoing. First, the comprehensive energy legislation that Senator Murkowski and Senator Cantwell are moving has been introduced and moved through a Rule 14 process directly to the floor, bypassing committee. This legislation is important for South Coast as it includes the Vehicle Innovation Act, which will authorize $250 million a year for the Department of Energy for grants supporting vehicle technology advancement.
Okay, will you make a call?
We'll continue to monitor that legislation. South Coast has previously written letters of support, and we'd suggest writing an additional letter of support for that legislation. Upcoming on Thursday, July 20th, will be some important nomination hearings for the Department of Energy for our ongoing discussions with the Department of Energy. Mr. David Jones of Pennsylvania will be the General Counsel nominee, and then Mr. Paul DeBar will be the Undersecretary for Science of the Department of Energy. So those are some nominations hearings that we will monitor for South Coast, and we would suggest working with the legislative staff and team to submit questions to get answers from those nominees on behalf of South Coast. And now I turn to my colleague Amelia.
Good morning. The update I have in addition to our written report is that the Ozone Standard Implementation Act will be moving to the House floor next week. It delays the ozone standard date and also expands the review period from 5 years to 10 years. We can provide additional information on that. And if I can, Dr. Burke, your question about research and development money at the Department of Energy, this has gotten a lot of attention by the House and Senate appropriations staff. The Trump budget is trying to skew the money more towards early development research, and it's traditionally been later development research. And a lot of the influence on where the money goes is with the Appropriations Committee. So they were pretty clear in the House mark of the Energy and Water Bill that they wanted to trend more towards earlier stage development, and this is in any number of categories. And I think we'll see some pushback on that in the Senate. And while Secretary Perry does have a lot of influence over what the funding opportunities look like, Congress still does have a lot of say in what stage those investments are made. So I think that if we want to influence that, especially on the vehicle technology side, it is a dual strategy of both Congress and the administration.
I'm unclear on why we haven't been on it already.
Say that again, Dr. Burke.
I'm sorry?
So we actually, what Amelia just talked about, Dr. Burke, we were approached by the House Space Science Technology Committee on this very issue, and they were asking us about the change in their prioritization on the early focus as opposed to the deployment. And they'd even asked us if we might consider testifying at a House committee meeting. Our point was that we thought that the deployment was much more important, and that's where we had invested significant funds, and it was where you were going to get the most benefit in terms of clean air benefits. So we've been in discussions with the committee on that, but within DOE, when we last met with DOE, they still don't have the political appointees, other than Governor Perry, to make any kind of decision. So what we're seeing with the Trump administration is the administration is basically trying to set their own budget and rearrange things. But the House and the Senate are saying in the budget process, not so fast. So we know that they tried to cut EPA funding. and that wasn't very successful. In fact, we got more money in the airshed grants, we got more money in DERA, and we just got notice yesterday that there's more money for us in the 103, 105 grant process. So it's a combination of
How much?
working on.
How much
the-
more?
Yeah, so on the DERA, the increase in the appropriations yesterday, and maybe Gary or Caleb or Amelia can help me out. I think last year it was appropriated, it was targeted at what, 40 million? And now it's at 16 million?
Is Mark or Dave Ramey on the phone?
Yes, Mark and Chris are on the call.
Okay, Mark and Chris, do you know how much that was, Mark? Last year and what they have?
For 103, 105 grants?
No,
Is that what you're asking?
first
It's
DERA,
hard to hear you, Derek.
first DERA, the increase in
For DERA,
appropriation.
So let me just say, for DERA, the increase was to 75 million from last year's enactment of $60 million. So an increase of 15 million. And for targeted airshed grants, the Interior Subcommittee approved 40 million, up from 30 million enacted in FY17. So a $10 million increase.
So we're working,
But of that increase, what can we reasonably expect to go after?
The targeted airshed grants.
Yeah, we're, Dr. Berg, this is Chris Carrick. We're working with Derek and his staff on the targeted airshed grants. EPA has got kind of a de facto cap on those funds, and so we're going to work to remove that cap. On the DERA stuff, it goes out, some of it goes out via formula, some of it goes out via direct grant, and I think, there's no real cap per agency on it, so we'll work with Dr. Miyasato and his staff to maximize what we get out of that.
So for the targeted airshed grants, we should get a large portion of it, and that's what we've been talking to Congressman Calvert, the chairman of the subcommittee, to make sure that there are no unrealistic caps placed on the program, because we should do very well.
I'm sorry, but, I deal in numbers, and that's what you're giving me is pros. Can you put a number to that pros?
So the numbers aren't distributed till we apply for them, but in the past, we've gotten a reasonable.
Yeah, for FY16, we got $5 million on the targeted airshed. For FY17, hoping to do better than that. That's where this whole cap issue comes into place. And then for FY18, hoping to make sure the cap isn't there at all. And on DERA, I'll have to get back to you, Dr. Burke. I don't have our exact breakdown on that, but I can give that to Derek, give to Wayne, and give to you.
So on the targeted, Dr. Burke, on the targeted airshed grant, last year we got $2-3 million awards. You can submit up to five projects per round. Okay, we got awarded 2 for a total of $6 million. Now for DERA, Fred's not here. I'm not too sure on DERA.
we generally get about 10%
Yes,
of the
usually about,
total, roughly.
yeah, it's about 10%. Yeah. So roughly $6 million, $7 million last year, I think it was in DERA funds.
Here's what I'm trying to figure out. $6 million is a lot of money to anybody. But if your goal is $1 billion, it's not much money. So where in this federal effort that we're making are we looking for a major score?
So we're looking for the major score on the infrastructure bill. And the major score that we're looking at would be 5% of the roughly $1 trillion budget that's being proposed. That would be a national bill or a national number for a clean air fund. So if we get $5 billion on a national level, we're trying to make sure that we would get anywhere from 10 to 20% of that. So that's where we're making the play in DC. It's twofold. One is preserving, and to the extent that we can increase the existing programs. So the DEER, the 103, 105, the targeted airshed grants, we've done a good job of maintaining and increasing those funds. But the Clean Air Investment Fund, that's the one that we've been working through Congress, through all the various members, the one that we've been talking about, the one that we've been approaching the White House, whether it's been CEQ, whether it's been OMB. Those are the ones that we're planting the seeds so that come this fall, we have the opportunity to get that large fund. That's the one that we've been spending all of our time and resources on.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the infrastructure bill has been delayed now for probably 3 or 4 months.
You're not wrong. You are correct. But what everyone tells us in DC is that they need to get rid of healthcare. They need to move on to tax overhaul before they can actually get to the infrastructure bill. So that's why people are saying the infrastructure is going to happen, if it happens, in the fall. And in part...
So I noticed there you said if it happens. So if it doesn't happen, what are we doing?
So we're also in discussions with Carper, in discussions with Barrasso, and others, Murkowski, where something like this could be done either on a separate bill, either through energy that could somehow be tacked on. But we're also looking at enhancing this somewhat similar to the way that DERA was done. Remember, Congressman Calvert had talked about DERA on steroids at $1 billion. We still want to push the investment fund on the Senate side. There seems to be more interest in this Clean Air Fund. Calvert seems more interested in just increasing the appropriation for DERA. Either way works for us if they get to that $1 billion mark, and that's where we sort of keep working infrastructure, and if not infrastructure, other opportunities within other bills, whether that's energy or whether that's some new mechanism. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay. This is obviously extraordinarily important to your plan, Wayne, and so, you know, I think that you've been very energetic in the effort in DC so far, and I think the wheel is grinding, but if you need more resources and more effort, you need to let the board know, because we all succeed together or we all hang together. So we definitely want to support you in trying to get as much out of these federal programs as we possibly can.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. I don't want to hang, so we'll do everything we can to make sure that we're successful.
I don't want you to hang either. Okay. We go to Mark.
Actually, I think my update was simply the DERA and the targeted airshed grant numbers. And the only other thing I would add is that the Senate has introduced a DERA reauthorization bill. Senators Barrasso and Inhofe on the Republican side, and Senator Whitehouse and Carper on the Democratic side. It would be a 5-year authorization bill. So that's a good step. It has been referred to committee, and we'll continue to follow that on the on SCAQMD's behalf. So that's my report.
Okay, is there any questions for any of the consultants from you, Dr. Parker, or any of the staff there?
I don't have any.
Okay, and let's move to the next item.
Jason or Paul, are you guys on the line?
Good morning, Paul.
Okay, that's the state fellows, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Dr. Parker and Dr. Burke. This is Paul Gonzalez. I don't really have much of an update to provide to my report, but I do want to highlight some of the upcoming deadlines that are coming up in the legislature. a week from today, Friday, July 21st, is the last day for policy committees to hear any bills. So all the bills will have to be out of policy committee and onto the appropriations committee by next Friday in order to be able to be continuing through the process. All bills that don't meet that deadline will turn into 2-year bills. In addition, next Friday is the start of summer recess for the legislature. So they'll be in recess from July 21st to August 21st. So I'll have a little bit of a lull there to really fine-tune all of our items with staff and others. And then from July 21st to September 1st is the appropriations hearings. That will be the last. September 1st will be the last day for fiscal bills to be passed out of the appropriations committees and to the floor. And then the rest of the month of September, from September 1st through the 15th, will be floor session only, and the last final push before they adjourn on September 15th. So next week we'll be busy with policy committees, getting bills out. We'll have a little bit of a lull for the month, and then we'll come back in September and hit it hard and be pushing for to get everything through before they adjourn on September 15th. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Say, Paul, this is Bill Burke.
Yes, sir.
I was kind of busy yesterday watching our hearing board here at AQMD, so I missed. Did anything happen on cap and trade?
It did, and I believe Will and Jacob are going to give the update on that, so I didn't want to take their talking points away.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll wait. I'll wait.
There was slight satisfaction, and I'm sure Will and Jacob will fill you in.
Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Paul Gonzalez?
My question was going to be on the cap and trade, but I'll wait until Will comes on.
Okay, Will, you're up to bat.
I'm up to bat. Good morning, everyone. Well, to answer your question, Dr. Burke, a lot happened yesterday. We had a full gamut of AQMD team and all the lobbyists all working our socks off. As you've probably read, there is a 2-bill package on the cap and trade, but really it's less of a package. They're not connected in any way. They're just 2 bills moving together. One bill being the reauthorization of the cap and trade program, which includes some language related to AQMDs and preemption on GHGs that we can talk about. And then a second bill, again, moving in tandem but not in any way connected, is an Assemblywoman Garcia Bill 617 that creates a new community monitoring program. I'm sure we can dive into these, but I'll give you a high-level view of these bills. As there is language in there that's not ideal in terms of authorization for districts and preemption for things like GHG, which districts have varying degrees of interest there. But the fundamental issue with both bills, with the package, as you can imagine, is funding. We have been sounding that drum for months now. We've been actively involved in the governor's office in negotiations with industry for months. Again, high level, the politics around the bill and funding is that GGRF funds, so dollars generated by auction revenue, are limited and not precisely known going forward how much there's going to be. And as you can imagine, with a 2/3 vote bill, every interest group has their hand out saying, well, give me my money, or else I'm going to hold 3 votes for my agricultural interest, or I'm going to hold my votes for my environmental interest. So we're in that mix as well. To date, we have gotten, and this is the difficulty we're dealing with right now, we have gotten commitments for funding from the governor and the pro tem and the speaker's office for our air quality goals. However, those commitments, don't lie well with us necessarily because, one, we don't have certainty over the timing. We've been told it happens after these bills are passed, and we don't have certainty about the amounts. So we put a full court press yesterday in a few of the committee hearings that took place on these bills to ensure legislators pressed the authors of the bill, but more importantly, in those hearings, presenting with the author were Governor Jerry Brown and Pro Tem Kevin DeLeon. And so we had members of the LA delegation press those members and the governor to ensure that funding happens. And again, we get a lot of nods, and yes, it's going to happen. It has to happen, but we're not getting the detailed commitments that we're looking for. Our understanding is the message last night from all these members, and we were coordinating with other districts, so we had Bay Area members pushing and San Joaquin members pushing of both parties, has that message has been heard loud and clear. We understand the governor and leaders are kind of locked down working on some type of funding proposal. So we're engaged in those conversations. Obviously, first and foremost within this conversation is if we're going to, reauthorize cap and trade, then there should be a dedicated cap and trade funding source for air quality, not only funding this monitoring program, but specifically funding mobile source reductions. But I think we're also, it behooves us to put some other options on the table, and we're thinking about those now and trying to provide some other options that would raise the type of money we're looking to raise. So I'll give you just the best guess right now on timeline is the legislature has said that they want to bring these bills up for a floor vote on Monday. As of last night, I think, Republicans have said there are 0 votes for this package in the Assembly, knowing there's many Democrats who aren't going to vote for the package. The governor's office has told me that they expect to need as many as 6 or more Republicans to support the package. So my gut tells me we still have a ways to go on this. The governor's office is definitely creating an air of urgency to get this all moved, but I think the legislature is likely to slow it down. In the meantime, we're going to keep pressing hard, coming up with alternatives for funding options, and trying our best to make sure the funding is tied to the passage of these bills, because I think that's our best opportunity.
That description sounds like my kids when I used to ask them, why aren't their grades better?
They did this.
I got a lot of words there, but I didn't really get much meat. Let me ask some specific questions. What do you think, in your professional opinion, is the chances of this bill passing on Monday? 10%, 80%?
Reauthorization of that, I think it's south of 50%. I think
I'm right back to why your grades aren't better.
I think it's 10% on Monday. Monday, it's not going to happen.
I think it's probably at 5% on Monday. That's my personal opinion. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, Dr. Burke. The governor is and I'm sure Wayne was in the room with us. The governor is incredibly passionate, and I think what we've heard from the governor's office is they know the longer they leave this ask out there, the more they get leveraged. So the reason I say less than 50% is because I think the governor is in a position right now over the next 3 days to cut big deals, which is why we're actively engaged in trying to get our deal. So I don't want to underestimate the governor and say, this is not going to happen on Monday, because between now and Monday, he can open up the checkbook and make a lot of votes slip.
Go ahead, Carter.
My question is, in the bill, are we fighting for, not fighting, but putting on full coat press for percentages that will be distributed to agencies such as that of ours? Obviously, we can't deal with the dollars because, nobody knows whether or not what it will generate. Are those some of the options that criteria that we're setting forth?
We've presented various options, including 20% of the overall total. GGRF funds. I would ask Will or even Philip if they can give the current breakdown. 40% is already allocated to high-speed rail.
Well, 60%.
I'm sorry, 60% is
Yeah.
already allocated to high-speed rail.
Right, that's formula.
And then what about housing?
That's also for the
That's
60.
included in the 60.
Okay, so then there's the 40% left.
Leftover, yeah.
And of that 40%, that's where we had argued that we should get 20%.
Well, we were actually arguing for 20% of the entire
total.
pot. So we make it 80% formula, basically. We would get 20% for the severe and extreme mountain areas.
Right. Part of the question was though, what's a real number? And I know Will and I had talked about 350 million in terms of what funds are available. Will, could you sort of just go over the funds that are really available and what we think is really open to us?
Yeah, and this is where I started. GGRF is a moving target, and it's, you know, oversubscribed already with folks with ask and demand. The governor's cap and trade reauthorization bill includes some tax credit sweeteners to help try to get some Republicans on board for utilities. It gets rid of a fire fee on rural residents, and it backfills. It pays for that tax, that utility tax, and it pays for that fire fee with GGRF. So that takes more GGRF money off the table. And this is why I think early on I said one of the things we're doing is pushing for GGRF, and we've asked for as much as half a billion of GGRF, and we've met with the governor's office. The reality though is there is so much potential oversubscription of GGRF that while we continue to push for GGRF, we're also putting ideas out there and proposals that are outside the GGRF, and quite frankly, maybe politically more difficult, but at the same time way more secure, because they would get us out of that trough of folks who are fighting for very limited money. But our ask, we've made very clearly to the governor and to the legislature that our need is $1 billion a year for 14 years. We've asked in these programs as early on in the governor's office for half a billion, and we continue to push that direction. I apologize for all the words, but as you know, Dr. Burke, it's a sausage-making process, and we're in the middle of it now.
Let me ask you this question, because notwithstanding all of the statements, in the current cap and trade bill that we have, are there any percentages in it currently? Because I've often
The answer
heard
to the
that.
question is no. I can answer that for you. Now, here's, let me help Clark cut to the quick where he's going. Is it true that the governor wants to take 60% for high-speed rail, and the speaker wants the other 40% for affordable housing?
No.
I think what we had heard, and actually I'm going to defer to the guys in Sacramento.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to defer to the gentleman in Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah, housing has become a big topic, and there's going to be a housing play associated with this. There's a package of bills that are being worked out now to address the affordable housing issue. I have not heard that additional GGRF would be part of that. There's already, within the 40% allocation, there has already been money set aside there for affordable housing in the past. And that's not a dedicated set percentage that doesn't change over time. So it's possible they'll try and ask for more, but I haven't heard that in this package they're going to ask for more. There are a lot of other bills dealing with new fees for real estate transactions to raise money for affordable housing, and some streamlined permitting and that kind of thing. So far, I haven't heard about GGRF funding, increased GGRF funding.
And Dr. Burke, this is Paul Gonzalez. If I can add on to that, I think Will's right on target with that. I haven't heard of anybody asking for any GGRF funds to be tied to affordable housing. but I do know that the folks in Sacramento who care about affordable housing are leveraging their votes for their bills that have to deal with affordable housing. So it's being used as leverage as a vote to be able to push an issue that's very important to them.
It's amazing how we hear different stories, because my understanding is that the speaker directly told the governor that he wants the 40% for affordable housing, and the governor told him, no way. So I'm trying to figure out, does AQMD get in between the rock and a hard place and get rubbed into oblivion here? Now, I have another question. What happens if this bill doesn't pass to the leadership in the assembly?
I think the biggest blow is to the governor, to the leadership in the assembly. This is a big priority for the pro tem. I think if it doesn't happen in the next few months, if it doesn't happen this session, it's going to roll over into next year. It's going to be a top priority next year. You know, they are pretty ahead of schedule here. The cap and trade program doesn't expire for 2 years, but obviously the longer they wait, the tougher it gets. I think the speaker is less engaged, this is less of a priority for the speaker than it is for the pro tem.
And Dr. Burke, this is Paul Gonzalez again. Just to add on to what Will was saying, I agree with what he's saying, and let's not forget that the governor has promised/threatened that if he can't get the package through the legislature, he has a very good-sized war chest, and he's willing to take this issue to the people and put it on the ballot. So there are backup plans, and as you know, the cap and trade program doesn't expire until 2020, and there is a little bit of time left, but I would say that none of us should ever underestimate this governor and his ability to craft a deal and get the votes that he needs.
Okay.
And this is Will Gonzalez again. I think what the most fascinating thing that's going on right now is where all the interest groups lie. You know, you have the governor pushing this, but industry, WISPA, chambers, manufacturers are all in support, right? So they all want this done too. The governor, on the other hand, has not only a war chest, but he has basically a command and control alternative already approved at CAR, ready to go if a cap and trade bill doesn't happen. And so industry wants a cap and trade bill to happen. The folks who are really holding it up, quite frankly, for the most part, are far left enviros who think it's too much of a give to industry. So it's a weird. If you would have been in the hearing yesterday, the support and the opposition was the strangest set of bedfellows I'd ever seen. So all to say that the governor does have a lot of good cards to play, and ultimately industry, I think, is his biggest ally in getting this done.
Dr. Burke, just adding on to what Will said about command and control, the governor was very passionate in committee yesterday, and he brought this up more than a few times, that he will go to command and control if this bill is not passed. So it wasn't just an inferred threat, it was a real threat that he made to the committees and to the legislature that he will implement it.
So the governor actually came and testified yesterday before the committee?
Yes.
Not only did he come and testify, he stayed the entire time.
For both
and
bills.
we were there from 9 a.m. to about 4 p.m.
For both bills.
And when we testified, you see where I am, the governor would be where Fabian is, and he glared at each of us as we testified in opposition. So.
And took notes.
It was, yeah, he took a lot of notes. I think he understood the need for the funding. And then after that, then the bill went to the Resources Committee and in the Assembly for an informational hearing. And at that one, the governor wasn't there, but the De Leon was there, the president pro tem. And that one, I thought that in the committee meeting, more of the committee members made a real point of saying the air districts need the funding. We need to be able to do something to address this issue. And so that's the leverage that we've been trying to put pressure on in meeting with all of these. Senator Lara said that he would be able to do something in appropriations. Stern, I mean, we hit everybody. And then the thing that's important is that all 35 air districts are on the same page. So as Will had said, it was myself, Syed, Jack Broadbent representing the larger districts, Alan Abs representing all of CAPCOA. So we're pushing the air quality as hard as we can.
Was he opposed to our 20% request?
Well, my understanding is that they don't want to address the funding within the cap and trade bill, because the second that they acknowledge that, then everybody goes to the table. So what he committed, or what he's been saying, is we're going to work with you guys, we're going to take care of this. But our position has been, until we see it in writing, we're going to push as hard as we can. So will we get the actual end result? I hope so. But in the meantime, we're going to keep putting pressure on so that if the legislature hopefully will be able to take that action directly. If LATA can make something happen in appropriations where there is that, great. But if not, then the fallback is they do a trailer bill.
Well, to be honest, everybody's got an opinion on this thing. My opinion is that the bill doesn't get passed in the near term. And no money of any note is derived by this district. So I'm not particularly happy with that. I know you're not, Wayne, and but it's going to be the facts of life, you know. So we're just going to have to deal with that.
Well, we still have 1274, Mr. Chairman, and that's the Carl Moyer one.
Yeah, I understand that. Any further questions on this item?
No, I don't have any further.
Okay. Thank you very much, Will.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 3. Ms. Kim?
Yes, good morning, Dr. Burke and Dr. Parker. AB 246 is authored by Miguel Santiago, and it would require the Department of Toxic Substances Control to assess, in consultation with the local air district, hazardous waste facilities to determine if fence line or other monitoring to measure and record emissions at those facilities is necessary or appropriate. The bill would require the department to complete and report to the legislature on its assessment by September 1st, 2018. However, staff feels that in order for South Coast to be involved in assisting with fence line monitoring assessments of hazardous waste facilities, provisions need to be added to the bill that provide for adequate reimbursement to local air districts to cover the additional costs that would be incurred to perform these assessments. Currently, it's unclear how much resources South Coast would be required to devote to such a mandated effort. Fence line monitoring itself is extremely resource intensive and, in most cases, requires substantial initial and ongoing costs with expertise to operate, review, and interpret the data coming from the systems. Additionally, certain air districts, such as South Coast, have large numbers of hazardous waste facilities located within their jurisdictions. South Coast would need more time to determine how many such facilities exist within its jurisdiction, and consequently, how long it would take to complete these assessments in time to prepare the report for the legislature as required by this bill. Staff is concerned that the September 1st, 2018 report deadline included in this bill is too short and should be extended. As such, staff recommends a work with author position on this bill.
I have a question, Ms. Kim. You're saying that the bill is there and it has no funds to be appropriated to carry these functions out?
Yes.
Yes.
It doesn't do that.
Yes.
Yes.
Just like
No funding.
just like the monitoring cap and trade, no funding.
So it's an unfunded mandate is what they're trying to, what this bill is.
Yes.
Well, okay, then I'm going to ask the question. If it's an unfunded mandate and we need money, is it appropriate for us to say, work with Arthur, or is it really to express that we don't really like bills that are going to come out and give a mandate without the necessary funding.
So Dr. Parker, this is Derek. I think we can go either way. Assemblymember Santiago is part of the group with aligned with the speaker. I think if we oppose the bill, unless amended, we could do that. But I think it's better just to work with the author and try to get our language put in there. But either way, it's up to the committee how they want to forward this as a recommendation. But I do want to mention that we don't have a quorum, so we can't take action, right, Barbara? If we don't have a quorum.
I was just going to go to Kurt. So really, all these items, these next four items, including the one Ms. Kim just presented, all have to be decided by the board. So unless there's some opposition that I can understand, I'm just going to move them to the board.
Mr. Chairman, can briefly just be stated not what the bill's about or what is the position and stuff of the staff on each one of them? Just, one line sentence. Is it approval, work with the author, disapproval?
So,
Exactly what?
Dr. Burke, also, this is Barbara, for clarification, if the members of the committee that are present have individual opinions, that can be communicated to the board as well, but we can't make a formal recommendation. So if you would like to give your individual opinions, that's certainly appropriate.
But he can hear staff recommendations.
And certainly you can hear staff recommendations.
I'd just like to hear the staff recommendation on
these four bills.
Right.
Derek, what are the staff recommendations on these four bills? The first one obviously is work with the author.
Yes, sir. You got from Philip?
Yeah, AB 1036 McCarty. The recommendation is to oppose that bill. And then SB 615 Hueso is recommendation is to support with amendment, with a technical amendment, and then SB 701 by Senator Hueso is simply a support.
Could you explain the?
Okay.
Sure. And AB 1036, the opposed position. This bill is dealing with organic waste composting. Here, basically, staff has concerns regarding crediting of emission reductions at landfills toward permits that the bill is seeking because it would be potentially in conflict with federal law and also with state new source review. Baseline emissions are considered to be actual emissions of the project or the equipment's potential to emit and do not include speculative offside reduction, which is what this bill is seeking. Also, air districts simply can't change new source review requirements to be less stringent to benefit these compost facilities. Also, there's an issue with defining new facilities as essential public services. That includes ones such as, let's see here, the schools, prisons, other detention facilities. The issue here is that creating new essential public services is going to put a strain on the internal offset bank of the SCAQMD. So current essential public services may not get the actual offsets that they normally would, and that may stop permits from those particular facilities from going forward, and that would have a negative impact on public health. Also, there's a concern that requiring to align the regulation and policies as opposed to just coordinate, which is what the bill requests, might cause all air districts to have identical rules. And finally, ACMD would seek to encourage organic waste diversion to biofuels and zero and near zero emission energy production, such as fuel cells, rather than just to compost it. And that's my report.
Any further questions?
Nope, I have none.
Okay, why don't we move this agenda to the full board meeting in August with no recommendation by the committee.
Individual, we can do individual. Can we do individual recommendations?
If they want to.
Okay. Dr. Parker, on the first bill, on AB 246, did you want your recommendation noted in the?
AB 246.
That's a Santiago bill,
Maybe,
the fence line monitoring bill.
no, I was concerned, I just had a concern, it wasn't really a recommendation, is that to the extent that if we do, say, work with the Arthur, that we go in with the understanding that we actually state to them that bills that have unfunded mandates should not be imposed upon us because we are in a dire need now for funds. And if you give us a mandate and without money to do that, we don't want to oppose something that could be beneficial to the health and welfare of the people, especially fence line monitoring of various different hazardous waste facilities, but we also need the funds in order to be able to carry out that particular function.
Okay.
So I think just saying that we work with the author without having the staff to go and express what our real true feelings are about it would be being a little bit disingenuous.
See, I'm on the opposite side of that issue. Government is all about unfunded mandates nowadays. So I think we take it to the board and find out what they think. I don't think, I would not go back into Assemblyman Santiago and tell him that I'm not interested in supporting his bill unless he gives me the money. So, and here comes, hey, my friend, the supervisor from Orange County. You almost missed the whole thing. So I'm going to back up so that you can participate, because now we have a quorum and now we can move this to the board with recommendations. I'm so happy you came. I'm so happy you came.
We'll have Monica read, do the bill over so it can be, an action be taken on it.
Monica, that was a little wordy there. Can you give Supervisor Nelson's one of the brightest guys I know? Give him the Cliff Note version.
Okay, I'll try. Okay, good morning. Good morning. So AB 246, which is authored by Miguel Santiago, requires the Department of Toxic Substances Control to assess with the local air district hazardous waste facilities to determine if fence line or other monitoring to measure and record emissions at those facilities is necessary or appropriate. And it would require the department to complete and report to the legislature on its assessment by September 1st, 2018. Staff feels that in order to be involved with assisting in fence line monitoring assessments of these facilities, provisions need to be added to provide for adequate reimbursement to local air districts to cover additional costs that would be incurred to perform such assessments. Okay. And staff recommends a work with author position on this bill.
And for clarity, Supervisor Nelson, in substance, I had stated that working with the author should be a statement that we really want him to consider adding some funding for this mandate that we given to us right now, and so that we can do this monitoring. It's really saying now you're going to take on another job without any funding. It's really not saying that we don't think it's a good idea. We think it's an excellent idea of doing as much as we can to support this, but we would really like for him to consider some funding itself so that we won't be strapped, since we are really needing as much funding as we can get right now.
You're on mute.
We can't hear you. Something, I think you've
Did Sean leave? That's what he thinks of Clark Parker.
Are you able to hear me?
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I'm off camera, but I think.
cut out again.
Oh.
He's trying to get the voice.
Supervisor Nelson is trying to get through audio west. I can see the top of his head.
We're calling them right now, Dr.
There
Burke.
he is, there he is.
Okay. We'll try it again. See if he's back on.
No.
Can you hear me, Sean?
He's
Okay. I got it, but the clerk's got to call the roll anyway. So, okay. Would the clerk call the roll with working up with the author on this bill?
A motion needs to be made.
Yeah, Dr. Burke, we need a motion.
Oh,
I move the item.
I second the item.
Okay.
Would the clerk call the roll?
Supervisor Nelson?
Yes.
Dr. Parker?
Yes.
And then Dr. Burke?
Yes.
Yes, Motion passes.
absolutely yes.
Okay,
Okay.
Supervisor Nelson, our audio staff, our AV staff is telling us that you may have yourself on mute. So if you go push the button again, we may be able to get your audio up.
Just push it, it's not gonna get any longer.
Okay, you're on.
There it is. There it is. We got you, Sean.
We can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Gotcha. We can hear you now.
Oh,
You're like
okay,
a Sprint
excellent.
advertisement.
All right, well, sorry about that.
All right, Philip, go.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Crab?
Yes, for AB 1036 by McCarty, just to review, staff had some concerns about crediting emission reductions at landfills, and that may violate federal law and state new source review, basically because those would be speculative in terms of the types of credits they're looking for. So staff would be concerned about that, and also the issue of creating new essential public services that would put a strain on the offset bank of the district and may preclude other facilities that are current essential public services from getting credits and can have a negative impact on public health. Also, there was an issue about staff really wanting to encourage organic waste diversion to biofuels or zero or near zero emission energy production rather than just to composting. So there's an opposed recommendation on this bill.
Why do we oppose this bill?
Dr. Burke, Philip is asking me to address the legal issues with respect to this bill. There's actually one issue under federal law and another issue under state law. For these particular types of facilities, this bill would define the emissions baseline from a composting facility to include credit for emission reductions that would occur at another site as a result of this material being composted rather than landfilled. And those are not allowable emission reductions because the Federal New Source Review Program requires the baseline to be calculated from emissions from that individual facility rather than giving credit for other reductions occurring elsewhere. And so by the same token, because this would change the method of calculation of New Source Review requirements, it would violate SB 288, which is a law put into effect in California in 2003 to prohibit districts from making their New Source Review rules less stringent. A second policy reason for our opposition to the bill is that it requires that districts classify these types of facilities as essential public services. We do have a classification in our New Source Review rule for essential public services that includes hospitals, sewage treatment plants, water systems, schools, and a few other types of facilities, but is largely used by sewage treatment facilities where they can get offsets at no charge from the district's internal bank. If the legislation were to mandate this year district to include these types of facilities as essential public services and therefore they would be eligible for free offsets, that could deplete our offset bank to the point where other facilities such as sewage treatment plants wouldn't be able to obtain offsets. And if that were the case, then of course they wouldn't be able to get a permit. So those are our two primary concerns with bill language at this point.
Thank you very much, Barbara. As usual, your explanation was excellent.
Barbara, would you conclude to say that it's also is, the primary reason is conflicts with existing state law that we have in a way that,
Existing state and federal law, yes, Dr. Parker.
Is there a motion on the opposed?
So moved.
second,
Would the clerk call the roll?
Supervisor Nelson,
Yes?
Dr. Parker,
yes?
Dr. Burke,
Yes.
motion passes 3-0.
Ms. Wesson?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. We're doing SB 615, authored by WASO, the Salton Sea Restoration Bill. This bill would require the California Natural Resources Agency to develop a 10-year plan to implement the Memorandum of Understanding between the agency and the United States Department of the Interior, entered into on August the 1st, 2016, and its addendum entered into on January the 18th, 2017, that addresses expected lake bed exposure, habitat, or air quality projects that will be implemented, and funding needs to implement the plan. In addition, the bill also renames the Salton Sea Restoration Act, passed in 23, in honor of John J. Benoit. So it would become the John J. Benoit Salton Sea Restoration Act. Overall, this bill is in line with the district's policy priorities regarding dust mitigation and addressing the air quality issues associated with the receding shoreline of the Salton Sea. However, staff wants to ensure that the 10-year plan developed by the agency to implement the MOU between the agency and the U.S. Department of the Interior also includes sufficient planning content to provide for hydrogen sulfide mitigation efforts. So we recommend a support with amendments position. Any questions? Good.
Yes, I have a few.
Supervisor?
Listen, this is not the agency to hash this out, but I think everyone understands. I mean, the Salton Sea is not a naturally existing circumstance. There were a group of engineers, I don't know, 100 years ago, that caused the Colorado River, they diverted it, and it jumped the banks of their diversion channel, and it created a fake lake in the middle of what otherwise is a desert. It's increased salinity and shrinking shoreline is because it's not supposed to be there, really, and it has no natural way to sustain itself. And every expert that I've heard, and I'm not an expert on the topic, but I listen because I'm fascinated with this, is you've got this massive lake in the middle of the desert caused by accident, and no one is suggesting anywhere that you're going to redivert the Colorado River. Those resources are oversubscribed already, right. And all of the takers from the river, the state of Nevada, the state of California, and Arizona, can't even get the allocations that they have in these old agreements from the early 30s. So I'm just concerned how realistic it is for the state to be getting involved in trying to, quote unquote, restore the Salton Sea. If you truly restored it, it would look like the rest of the area south of Indio, because that's actually what it was. And it's just bizarre to me that we're chasing a man-made circumstance that was truly caused by accident, and under the mantra of we're going to go to a restoration. If we respect and defer to nature, that's supposed to be the desert. And it's not that we can't, with engineering, push that back, but I'm reading from our own staff report that the planning estimates for the Salton Sea are expected to be in the billions, and many of the bill's own supporters concur the public health and the Salton Sea restoration costs will far exceed any currently available funding. I mean, can we really even accomplish what the mission is? And God bless John Benoit. I love the man. I know he's from here. I want to respect his legacy. I'm just nervous that people are chasing something that isn't really available, and we're creating a bit of a fiction here. We don't have the resources to return the Salton Sea to its original splendor, unless we go back to its real original splendor, which is just the beautiful desert that it was.
You know, my take on this is Supervisor Nelson's absolutely right in the fact that this used to be desert, but it was turned into this enormous lake. And now the Air District's concern is not about the restoration of the lake or the shoreline of the lake. It's about the air quality, which may be damaged because of the receding shoreline of the lake. So, you know, I have a little different take. My take is that we should look at this as it affects air quality, and not the cost is not our job. Our job is that shoreline recedes. We all know that there's been significant downwind, dust and smell from the Salton Sea. Now, just before John passed away, they wanted to do another study. And so I called John. I said, John, are you supporting this study? And he said, look, they've studied this thing to death. You know, if they want to do another study, I'll support another study, but I don't think another study is really the answer to the problem. My take is that Senator Waso has been submitting an enormous amount of time on the Salton Sea issue. And it's really at the very tip of his district, contains no voters. So, you know, it's kind of an admirable effort on his part. So I'm going to support it because I'm concerned about the air quality issues of it. You know, what it was, what it will be in the future is not relevant to me. It's what the contamination of the air that may be caused by the current and future conditions that it motivates me to support it.
My question is the memorandum of understanding that we're going to have to sign relative to our particular involvement in this. What does it really, bottom line, commit us to do? As Supervisor Nelson was saying, is that the study, what does it really commit us to do? Because whenever it starts drying up and the fish start dying, we get complaints that the air quality is so, you know, horrendous that it causes us to go out and monitor and determine exactly, and as Supervisor Nelson said, not a lot we can do because it's Mother Nature taking over its course. The water's drying up and the salt is basically having a chemical effect with the earth, and the fish are dying and we get the smell. But what does this MOU cause us? What additional responsibility does it put on our agency relative to this?
Dr. Parker, the MOU was between the Natural Resources Agency and the Department of Interior, the United States Department of Interior.
At all.
It was not with us. It was not with South Coast SCAQMD, so we didn't have to sign off on anything. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So therefore, to the extent it suffers that this is a little bit of an added responsibility of saying that what Senator Waso would like to do is to honor his friend Supervisor North in some kind of way, but it really doesn't make the matter itself go away or any exacerbate it, you know, worse than what it is right now. Is that correct?
Well, Dr. Parker, this bill would require the Natural Resources Agency to enter into a 10-year plan or come up with a 10-year plan to look at how they're going to restore the Salton Sea.
So our participation would be primarily limited to air quality. We would be asked, what are your opinions? What are our opinions with regards to potential air quality impacts? There's a lot of precedent.
That's what my question is. My question is that what involvement does this actually commit us to do, more so than the involvement that we have right now? Because we're having to give our opinion when the air quality goes bad because it's within our geographic area of oversight.
You know, at this point, Dr. Parker, we don't anticipate any more than what we're currently involved with. We are currently involved on various advisory committees where we're looking at potential impacts. The South Coast was involved on Owens Lake, where it looked at potential impacts associated with, you know, what was once a lake and became dried, and the air quality impacts that became associated with that. You know, we can expect the Salton Sea to have much greater impacts to human health, as Dr. Burke was saying, because it's been a sink for all the pesticides and ag use in the area for such a long time. So in addition to the PM issues, there's going to be real challenges. So all this does is say that we're going to continue to keep our head to the grindstone, so to speak, and where we have opportunity to provide input, we'll provide input based on our expertise.
Right. So it's, in essence, it's really the same thing that we're doing now and have been doing in the past.
Yes.
Well, you know, from that standpoint of view, we're not going to basically be able to shrink, you know, whether or not this bill is, you know, comes about or not, because it really just now codifies in some kind of way that we'll attend these committee meetings and work with folks and give them our opinion as it relates to air quality, which we're doing anyway.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yes, sir.
I appreciate the discussion. I'm just also concerned that what the bill really proposes is, of course, a general obligation bond. You know, we can undertake benevolent efforts without necessarily creating a bond debt. But in the middle of all the air quality and everything else, they're also sneaking in and we might do a green energy project or renewable energy. I'm just uncomfortable floating a general obligation bond when they're not sure what exactly the projects are and how they want to go about them. We absolutely should participate in air quality discussions at the state and federal level, and I know we will lead on those discussions. I don't think they're ready to pass a $500 million bond. I don't think they'll get the votes anyway, but I just can't see how a $500 million bond is warranted if they can't specifically define what exactly they want to do. And I know that from Orange County, where increased tax takes a 2/3 vote, we have twice gotten over 2/3 for our half-cent sales tax because we've told people exactly what we're going to do and done exactly what we told them we'd do.
Supervisor, the Bond Act is really part of the next bill, SB 701, which is the Obligation Act. So the
Sorry, okay.
So
understood.
We can vote. We can vote for this one and impose the next one.
All right.
Okay. You want to make?
I'll move the item.
Yeah, I'll second it. Okay, will the clerk call the roll? This is on 615. Wayso.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Supervisor Nelson?
I will support this one.
Dr. Parker? Dr. Parker?
Yes.
Dr. Burke?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Now, what I find interesting about calling this a John J. Benoit thing, I didn't even know, well, Wayso knew Supervisor Benoit, but they were not, as from my knowledge of both of them, they weren't friends. They both served in the Senate, but in different times. And I think the common interest of the Salton Sea is what made Senator Waso want to name this bill after former Supervisor John Benoit. Okay, Mr. Crabb, you're up on 701, and be prepared for
Doesn't look good.
the outcome.
No.
Okay, SB 701 by Senator Hueso would propose a $500 million general obligation bond for the November 2018 ballot for purposes related to restoration of the Salton Sea and implementation of the quantification settlement agreement, which is a comprehensive water transfer agreement. The Salton Sea is threatened by increasing salinity and reduced flows, and these changes threaten the wildlife resources as well as air quality in the region. The authors pointed out that even with an $80 million budget allocation to the Salton Sea, the latest estimates for Salton Sea restoration are pegged between $1 and $3 billion. This bill is in line with the district's policy priorities regarding dust mitigation and addressing air quality issues associated with the receding shoreline of the Salton Sea. So staff recommends a support position on this bill.
Okay, I have one question, and I know Senator Nelson has voiced, I'm sorry, Supervisor Nelson has voiced his concern. This $500,000 authorization, $500 million in this particular bill, won't this have to go to the public? I'm saying to the general public for a vote?
Yes, it'll go on the November 2018 ballot for the voters to decide.
So this just authorizes him to be able to put it on there and to see if people will vote for it or not in this area.
Correct.
And what it's going to do. Okay. So it really is a kind of a misnomer that we would be support. Well, really it's not, because what we're saying, we would support in telling the people in that area that we believe that they should pass this bill, and I think that's what Supervisor Nelson was alluding to. Okay, you've answered my question.
Do you have any further comment, Supervisor?
Only that it's a statewide bond initiative, as I understand it, not a local to Imperial Valley.
Yeah, that's correct.
You are correct.
Really?
My apologies.
Really? Is that true?
Yes.
Our council concurs that that is correct.
Oh, that's a different, okay, then, that's a different position. So everybody all over the state would have to pay for a $500 million bond to clean up the Salton Sea.
And Dr. Parker, I assure you, that's just an initial down payment. 500 million will not cover the Salton Sea. No way.
Why is it we have a support for the bill? What is the staff's reason for support for this bill?
So I think, as was mentioned earlier, we're obviously concerned about the effects of the lake drying up and the odors. You may recall probably about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a major storm in the desert, kicked up a lot of the dead kelp and others, and caused the H2S odor problem, not only in the Coachella Valley, but we got complaints as far as Simi Valley, about 150 miles away. So we're obviously concerned about the lake continuing to be degraded and drying up, which will affect our air quality here in the basin.
Right, but if Mr. Nastri's statement holds a little bit of truthfulness and to the extent that it's really only a smidgering of the amount that it would take in order to solve this problem, are we not fooling the people of the state of giving them the impression that if we spend this $500 million, that's going to solve the problem?
I agree with that. Although I think asking them for $1 billion is a little bit more daunting. So I think what they're doing is they did a metro where they do chunks at a time. They realize that they need more money, and they'll go back to the voters as Metro has done in the past. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why they're asking for 500 million now. It's just a Wayne said, just a down payment. And then also that the latest estimates is again what Philip said earlier is going to cost between $1 and $3 billion to restore the Salton Sea.
What will we get out of this amount to help us relative to fighting the kind of issues that we are concerned about?
Zero.
Out of the Salton Sea. Do we get anything?
No, I mean, other than hopefully it'll help restore the lake, and so we don't get the continued H2S odors that we're going to get.
It's not just H2S,
It's-
it's the toxicity.
Is it toxicity? Okay.
There are a number of things that we would have to look at, and it doesn't have to fully restore the lake. What you have to do is you have to minimize the release of the playa and the materials that are contained therein. So there's all sorts of things, and that's where you look to the lessons learned at Owens Lake. And in that area, some parts of it can be gravelled, some parts can have low moisture. You can have planting. There's a lot of things that can be done. It's just that one of the things we're trying to do is to minimize the release into the environment to mitigate the potential health impacts. And what this
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was a natural pause from Mr. Nastri. Listen, maybe this is just a semantic detail, but Owens Lake is a natural lake that the Los Angeles Basin took the water from. It wants to be a lake. We prevent it from doing so. The Salton Sea is the exact opposite. It has no business being a lake. Someone by mistake diverted one of the greatest rivers in the Western Hemisphere for a couple of years, and you filled up a sinkhole that never was intended to be a lake. These two really, although you can make the parallel, they both have dust because a lake was drying up. One we purposely dried up, the other is created by accident. These are not the same thing. Well, I mean, we're fighting against nature, A, and B, $500 million, at least if they get the money, may just incidentally help the air. But if we're going to spend $500 million and support it, I'm just thinking that the brain trust in the room I'm looking at on the screen probably could come up with some better projects for $500 million than what you're going to see on this wish list.
So is there a motion to approve this item? I think this item just died. Oh, or is there a motion to oppose this item?
Realistically, we should stay out of it. I don't think we need to poke them in the eye.
Okay. Item number 4. That's the report. That doesn't take any. Is there any other business before the legislative committee today? Because I got a complaint from the chair of the admin committee meeting that we ran over, so.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Supervisor.
Public comment.
Dr. Burke? Dr. Burke?
Yes.
Public
We
comment?
have public comment? Okay. Let's hear it.
We have none.
Just kidding, no public comment.
Well, all righty then.
Okay. No public comment here. Okay.
Bye-bye, folks.
We're going to adjourn the legislative committee. Let you clear the room there, and then we'll start the admin committee.